Well, good morning. Welcome to my kitchen. How is everyone this morning? Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. And this morning, I'm going to be canning some pork, and I'm going to be using an electric canner. And I'll be following the ball canning recipe or the USDA approved canning process. So this is not Rebel canning, and it does take some time. So I've got some puppies here this morning that need their treat. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then we'll get started canning. I see you. I see you. These are my babies, Ryder and Lily. It's Lily. Okay. So we will get started. Yeah, that's all Mommy has. Get your goodie. That's all I got. Go lay down. Let me get my hands washed and then we'll get started. I'm going to move you over. And this is where I'm going to be canning this morning. So try and get that to where you'll be able to see my workspace. I'm kind of limited on my workspace. Here, Mommy. Hey, baby. Okay. Go lay down. Go lay down. Come on. Go lay down. Come on, Miss Lily. Go lay down. Go lay down. That's all done. All done. Okay. First of all, let me bring you back over so I can have a little bit more room. Sorry about that. Okay, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be canning this bowl of pork. And this is a pork butt. To save a little bit of time, I went ahead and cut it off the bone because it does have a bone. And you will find a bone inside when you're cutting the pork from the pork butt. And this is a bone-in butt roast, and it is $1.88 a pound, and it is 8.46 pounds, so it's almost 8.5 pounds. And this was $15.99. So I will be using this bone. I'll put this in my crock pot and cover it in water. And then I will be making a bone broth out of this bone. So I'm going to set that to the side. And let me wash my hands again real quick. No, babies. No. No, no. All going. That's all I got. All going. Okay. I've got little ones that are just not being cooperative this morning. My little fur baby is just not being cooperative. But if I keep moving along, I think he'll go take his goodie and go to the other room. Okay. So I have all of my pork in a bowl, ready to be cut. I'm going to be using pint jars. So I have washed 5 wide mouth pint jars. And these are just ball. I bought these, it's a new case. So I'm using the ball lids that came with it. And I've got my 5 rings. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is when you're canning, this is not Rebel canning. This is canning using the USDA approved canning method. And there's multiple books out there that you can get. This one is the Ball Home Preserving. This is the USDA Agriculture Complete Book of Home Canning. And this is the one that we're going to be using today. And then Ball often upgrades their books, and they'll put out new ones. So this is another Ball Blue Book, Canning and Preserving. And then here is another Ball Blue Book, Canning and Preserving. So always follow either Ball guidelines when you're canning, or follow the USDA guidelines, because a lot of people do what's called Rebel canning, and if you're Rebel canning, you're not following a guideline, and you can make yourself or your family sick if you're not using the proper procedures and process. So I will be using the proper procedure and process using the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Complete Book of Home Canning. And I will be using, let me bring it a little bit closer. I will be using my Presto canner. This is an electric canner, and it is a pressure canner. So it would be doing anything that a regular pressure canner, if I was using it on my kitchen range, would do. But this is new. I wanted one, and my husband purchased me one for my birthday. So I've been experimenting with it, and so far I really like it. And this is the Nesco, and it will hold 5 largemouth pints or 4 quarts. So it's not a large canner, and it takes 8 cups of water. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 8 cups of water in. And you always make sure that you have a rack. It will come with your canner. Make sure that mine comes with the canning rack and a steaming rack. So make sure you're using the proper rack. This one is for canning. So I'm going to go ahead and put in, this is just lukewarm water. And that is 8 cups. So, and this is a 9.5 quart digital smart canner. And it is the Nesco. And I'll be going through the directions as we use the Nesco canner. I really like it. It's basic instructions. If you follow the instructions, I did my first attempt using it. I used chicken breast, and I did 5 pints, and 1 pint did not seal. And whenever I looked closely at the pint, my ring, even though it was a new one, was dented. So always check to make sure that you don't have any dents or anything in your rings, and that your lids don't have any dents in them, that your seal all the way around is secure, and that you do not have and that you do not have any chips or nicks on your jar lid or jar rings. And as long as you check all of those things and then follow the proper procedures, follow your directions, everything should turn out just fine. And you know that you're following USDA guidelines, so you're canning safely. You're not going to make anybody sick. So anyway, it says add 8 cups of hot water. Now, I'm going to be cold packing. My pork is cold. So I'm not going to be putting hot water in there. I'm just putting room temperature water in. So let me go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and start cubing up this meat. I'll move you over here to my area where I'm going to be working. Let me see if I can't fit these in here. And I'm going to be going with the instructions from the USDA guidelines. And I did mark it. And these are absolutely wonderful books. They've got all the information that you need to be canning properly and safely. So, number one, when you're looking at the book, you want to find what are you canning. And I'm canning pork. So this is beef, bear beef, lamb, pork, sausage, veal, and venison. So that's all the different meats. And then you want to check your altitude. Your altitude is very, very important because of your pressure that you're going to be canning under. So you need to check your area and find out what is your altitude. Mine is under 1,000 feet. So I'll be using this table. It has 4 different tables for altitude. And this one is mine. So that's the altitude that I will be choosing. And it says pints, 75 minutes. If I was doing quarts, it would be 90 minutes. So that is the guidelines that I'm going to be using, the table that I'm going to be using the USDA Complete Book of Home Canning, Department of Agriculture. So that way I know that I'm doing this. I'm going to be using the pressure canner because meat has to be pressure canned. You have to have that pressure in order to get completely through the meat and to cook the meat properly so that it's shelf stable. So the first meat that I tried in the electric canner was chicken breast. And this is the result. It turned out absolutely beautiful. And I canned this on January the 20th, 2026. I just did that this year. So that was the first time that I used the electric canner because this is new to me. And all of my jars sealed but one, and again, that was because the ring was deformed and I didn't see the deformed. So I turned that into homemade chicken noodle soup. Because you have 24 hours after you can, if it does not seal, either put it in the refrigerator and use it, or you have to go through the process again and recan it. And this one is beef. Now you're going to see a difference between the two. This one is more liquid, and this one you're going to see a fat cap. Now this was a beef roast, and no, the liquid does not cover all of the meat in the jars because I'm cold packing, I'm not hot packing. There's 2 different methods, and when you're cold packing, you're just putting your meat in your jar. You make sure that when you get your jars that they are washed, They are clean. They're rinsed, clean, dry. And I wash my lids, my rings, make sure they're clean and dry. And then you're just going to put your meat, your cubed meat, into your jar. And then you're going to add your lid, your ring, and you're going to go through the canning process of pressure canning. But whenever you're doing the cold pack, you're not adding any liquid. You do not add any liquid. So you're going to have, like with your beef, with your pork, you're going to have what's called a fat cap. And you're going to see meat that's above that ring. Is that meat good? It absolutely is. And when you open the jar and put it out into a pan and cook it, that will automatically turn and look just like this, because this jar is properly sealed. And you notice I do not have rings on these jars, because once they've sealed and I hand wash them after they've sealed, I want to make sure these rings are removed, because when I place these in my pantry, I want to make sure that there's nothing on this lid. I want to make sure this lid is sealed. And if I have a ring on there, it can give me a false seal. So if I go in and I go to pick this up and I notice that the seal is not correct, then I will discard this pint of beef, because the seal is not good. So always remove your rings. Wash your jars after they've sealed. Remove your rings, wash your jars. Go ahead and date it, put on it what it is, and place it in your pantry. But that way you don't get a false seal whenever you're checking your pantry. And I do check my pantry often. And the reason I like this small canner is it does 5 pints, and it's only my husband and myself. So I'm not going to have a lot of extra canned foods, but I'll have extra meats, proteins that are shelf stable, that they're in on my pantry. And if I just want to go in and grab, say, chicken and make some chicken noodle soup, it's already cooked. It's going to be so quick. The same thing with the beef. If I want to make a stew, this has been already been cooked. Just like going to the store and buying a can of beef or a can of chicken. It's the same process. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get started cutting up some of this meat. See if I can get you over here where you can see what I'm doing. And I'll try and stay in the frame. And I have this large bowl. Now this is almost 8.5 pounds of pork. So normally, typically, about 1 pound of meat per pint. So I'm probably going to have extra pork. And if I do have the extra pork, I'll either put in another canner through, or I'll turn this into pulled pork, barbecued pulled pork for sandwiches using my crock pot. So let's get started and I'll show you the process. So you're going to need, if you're using the pressure canner, the electric pressure canner, the Presto, you'll need 5 pints, either wide mouth or regular, your 5 lids, your 5 rings, and you're going to need some white vinegar for wiping the rims before we put the lids and the rings on. Pork is very fatty, and you don't want anything on the rim of your jar before you put your lid on. So let's go ahead and get started. Make sure your workspace is clean, that it's sanitized. Make sure that your hands are clean and that they're sanitized. And follow the USDA guidelines when you're canning. That way you know you're not going to make your family sick. You're not going to make yourself sick. Now, according to the USDA guidelines, it's cut your meat into 1-inch cubes. Now, there is a little bit of fat on this, but it's not real heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that because pork tends to be dry. Whenever you can pork, make sure you have a good sharp knife. Now, if I have some that's a lot of just plain fat, I'll go ahead and cut that off and lay it to the side. And you want to cut these in about 1-inch cubes. And I do leave the fat on because that helps keep your pork a little more moist. And if you don't like the fat, when you open your jar, you can remove this fat cap before you use your pork. Now I'm just going to take my pint jar, and as I'm cutting this up, I'm just going to drop the meat directly, and this is just a cold jar because we're not hot packing, we're cold packing. And this is quite a long process, so I may have to cut this video into 2 because it takes 75 minutes once the canner gets up to pressure. So you're going to put your water in your canner, which I did. I have 8 cups of water. You're going to have your meat in your jars. And whenever you're putting the meat in the jars, you don't want to press it down hard. You don't want to overpack it. And this is called cold packing or raw packing. This makes absolutely delicious pulled pork barbecue sandwiches. Just go in, and if you want a quick meal, grab out a jar, open it, warm it up, add your barbecue sauce. It shreds so easy. Now, like this piece has got a lot of fat. I'm going to lay that off to the side. Now, when you're filling your jars, you have to do what's called headspace. Now, this line is 1-inch headspace. So you can push down just a little. You don't want to overpack. But you want to make sure that you have the proper, what they call headspace. So this line is 1 inch. And they're asking you to fill this up to 1-inch headspace. So I'm going to continue that and fill up my jars. And again, this was about 8.5 pounds. And it was a pork roast butt with the bone in. It makes an absolutely wonderful canned pork. You can make stews with it. You can make, sorry, my puppies may hear my neighbors. I do have 2 Maltese puppies. So you may hear them in the background. So I'm just going to continue. And why am I using pint jars? I'm using pint jars because it's only my husband and myself. Now, you can use quart jars if you have a bigger family. So, you know, use accordingly to what you know that you'll use, you and your family will use. I know that a pint jar is plenty if I'm going to be making a stew. And if I have company, I can always grab an extra pint jar out. That has a lot of fat. So I'm going to be removing the big chunks of fat. A little bit of fat, I don't mind. Ryder, Lily, no, babies. And again, I'm going to be filling this up to 1-inch headspace. Hopefully you can see that okay. And you can press down just a little bit, but you don't want to overpack it. And again, you want to have your 1-inch headspace. That is part of the canning process. In order for it to can properly, you have to follow your headspace. If you were canning something else, it may say a 1/2 inch or 1 inch. So follow your canning guidelines for whatever it is you're canning. And this guideline said 1 inch. And we're not adding any liquid. All we're adding is the meat only. This is called raw packing. I think it's so nice to have some extra protein on your pantry. If your power goes out, you can go in and get a jar of your canned meat and make an easy, quick meal. So I usually try to keep 5 to 10 pints of chicken, pork, and beef. So usually 5 to 10 pints. And that way I know I'm rotating it. Of course, I have a small family. And be careful when you're working with pork. It is very fatty and it is very slick. So make sure you have a solid surface. Make sure you've got a sharp knife. And be careful not to cut yourself because it is very slick. So I think I'm going to have enough to do at least 2 canners. Of course, I'm only using pints. Again, I'm checking my headspace, 1 inch. And if you are canning and you don't have enough to fill up your jar to give you the proper headspace, and if you're doing quarts, go ahead and move down to a pint. Or put it in the refrigerator and use it for a meal. But never go under the recommended headspace. That's very important in the canning process. And pork does, if you use a pork loin, you can use a pork loin instead of a pork butt. But pork loin tends to be more dry when it's canned. So that's why I'm using a pork butt. And that's a lot of fat. So I'm going to set that to the side. Now, if you render down your fat, you can make lard. I don't render mine down because I don't usually have enough to render down. But you can render it down and make lard. You can make lotions. You can make different things with your pork fat. And look how pretty that pork is. That would have made a really nice pork roast. And again, I'm cutting these into about 1 inch cubes. And as you cut through, if you run into a lot of fat, you can trim that off. But I do like to keep some of the fat. It just makes my meat juicier. Trying to think if I'm forgetting anything. Again, you can push down a little bit, but you do not want to push down. Hello, what will you be cooking? Today we are canning pork, and this is a pork roast butt. And we are using the USDA canning guideline for canning and preserving meat. This is not Rebel canning. This is the actual process that USDA recommends. And my canner only holds 5 wide mouth pints. So we'll go ahead and get this started, and then I can continue to cut up my meat and get ready for the next. And that is almost all fat, so I'm going to lay that to the side. The pork butt has a lot of fat, and it does have the bone. And I showed the bone at the beginning where I had cut my meat from the bone, and then here in a little bit I'll be putting that bone in my crock pot, and I'll just add some water. You can add some vegetables, some carrots, onions, celery, whatever you'd like, and you can make your own broth, just like you would make chicken broth, using the bone. And then that way none of your meat is going to waste. You're getting as much use out of it as possible. This one has a lot of fat, so I'm going to go ahead and get that off of there. Now, if you have a lot of fat in your jar, will it use your jar? Did you always cook like this meal? Is it a tradition? Yes. My family, my mother canned a lot, preserved a lot of our foods. We had a garden in the summer, and my mother and my father would go hunting, and they would can venison, deer meat. Okay. And again, I'm checking my headspace. So I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands, and I'll go ahead and move you over after we get the lids on. So I'm going to set this aside. Wash my hands. Pork is very greasy. Okay, now I'm going to bring over my jars. And I have 4 or 5 pints. You are incredible. You are incredible, madam. Where are you from? I'm originally from West Virginia, and my husband is from Ohio, and he loved Ohio, so we have stayed in Ohio. Okay, I have 5 pints, and they are wide mouth. You have a wider mouth rim, and then you have a regular mouth rim. These are a wide mouth rim. I don't think I have a regular mouth. And the reason I like to use the wide mouth with meat is it's easier for me to get it out of the jar whenever I get ready to use my meat for a meal. So the next thing I'm going to do, I can just leave it there, is I have some just regular distilled white vinegar. I want to make sure that the rims of my jar are clean. I don't want anything to keep this from processing properly. And with pork, I like to use vinegar, white vinegar, because I want to make sure that I have everything off of the rims. And I'm just going to take the vinegar and I'm just going to go all the way around my rims. And it does not make your food taste like vinegar. But this is just ensuring that I don't have any grease or anything on the rim of my jar. Okay, so once I've done that, they used to tell you to boil your lids. And if you are processing in a pressure canner, they're not actually requiring that you do that anymore. But I do wash my lids and rinse them well and let them dry, so I know that they have been cleaned. And then just place your lids on your jar. Again, make sure your hands are clean, your working space is clean. Always keep everything sanitized, because you are going to be putting this away for yourself and your family. Now, if you're using a pressure canner, they say finger tight. So what does finger tight mean? I hope it will be delicious. It is absolutely delicious. What does finger tight mean? A lot of people question finger tight. If you're using a pressure canner, it says only put your rings on your jars finger tight. So I'll hold my jar. I'll just take 2 fingers and turn until I don't feel any resistance. That is finger tight. Now, why only finger tight? If you're using a pressure canner, you got a lot of pressure, and it needs to be able to let any extra pressure, any extra air up out of the jar. If you tighten it too tight, your lids will buckle, your jar will seep, and your jar will not seal. So again, just practice holding the jar with one hand. Just take 2 fingers and just turn it until it stops. That's finger tight. Some people will go until it stops and then go another quarter of a turn. I just go finger tight. Okay, so now we're ready to move over to the canner. So let me move you over. I have my canner set up. And today I'm using the pressure canner. On the back of the canner, there is a gauge. And this will say airtight and vent. You want to make sure this is vent. Now, with the electric canner, it will come with this. This one's black. And this is for your elevation of 1,000 feet or below. If it's above, you would pull this one off. It just pops off. And it comes with a green one, which is for over 1,000 elevation. So whenever you're getting ready to start your canner, you go ahead and flip this over to vent or exhaust, whichever it may say. Now, this is the Nesco. And this is a pressure canner, the same as if you would be using one on the stove. Like your, I think I have a, what is it? I can't remember the name of it. That just went right off my... I have a regular pressure canner that I use on the stove. But I wanted this one because it does small batches. It does 5 pints or 4 quarts. And instead of me having that on my stovetop, I can just set this up on my counter. And it's called the Electric Smart Canner. It goes through the whole process for you. Then it depressurizes. And whenever it says it's done, then you just wait till everything's done, go in, open it up, and you're done. So this is new. This is the 3rd time I've used it. And this was my birthday gift from my husband. So this is the Nesco. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and plug it in. And I am limited on my space. So I'll turn it and then I'll turn it back. The reason I'm turning it this way is because my cabinet space, I can't get my lid open. So that will give me room to get my lid open. Now I'll bring you a little closer. Let's see if I can raise this up. I think you'll be able to see that okay. And I'm just going to place my 5 pints in the canner. Now, when you're using this canner, excuse me, I did notice that it's very snug whenever you're using the 5 pints if they are wide mouth. And you can see how snug that is. Very snug. So when this is done, what I'll normally do is take a rag and I'll remove my first one from the canner and then set it over on my drying rack or drying towel, because when I'm trying to use my lifters, I cannot get my lifters down in. This is that small. So I've got all of my jars in, so I'm just going to close my lid and turn it to lock. And you can hear that lock. That way you know it's locked. Okay, and now here it is on. So I'm going to get out my pamphlet. I have 8 cups of water that I had put in the canner. I put in my canning rack and then my 5 pints of pork. Okay. I really like this. It's got easy instructions. It says, place your filled jars into the canning rack, into the inner pot, which we did. Add 8 cups of, it says hot water, but I'm cold packing. My meat's cold. My jars are cold. Well, room temperature. So my water is also room temperature. Close and lock the lid. And it says to apply the proper, they call this a jiggler. So I know I have my proper jiggler because I'm under 1,000 feet. I need the black one. Select high. On my button. So let me see, move you back a little bit there. So high pressure. Check the time button. So on my time, I want 75 minutes because for pints, I need 75 minutes If this was quartz, I would need 90 minutes. And then I press start. Now, this, you're going to see this spinning. This will spin until the pressure builds up in my canner. It says to press the start, the digital chase will begin to rotate, and this will continue until the correct internal temperature is reached, which can take up to 30 minutes. Steam will begin venting through the pressure limited valve. This is normal. Once the pressure canner reaches the correct internal temperature, the canner will beep. So my next thing I'll be doing is listening for this to beep. And the control LED display will read E10. So it'll go from spinning like this to an E as in Edward and 10. Okay, once I hear that beep. The preset E10 code means E for exhaust mode and 10 equals the number of minutes that will count down. Whenever you're pressure canning, even if you're using a pressure canner on your kitchen stovetop, once it reaches pressure and you have a full steady stream of steam, you have to time it for 10 minutes. You have to allow that 10 minutes. So this is called a electric smart canner. So it automatically will count down those 10 minutes. The pressure canner will automatically count down from E10 to E0. Once the control LED display shows a blinking E0, the canner will beep. At this time, the pressure limited valve must go to airtight. So right now, I have this turned to vent or exhaust. Once that goes down and it has E0 and it beeps, I'll just come over and flip this to airtight. Once the canner resumes, the control panel will beep again. The required process time that I entered earlier will now show on a countdown. So once I've turned this over to exhaust or to airtight, this will change from the E0 to 75. And that's the amount of time I entered, 75 minutes. And this will start counting down as it's processing. During this time, the canner will begin to release steam. The weighted vent ensures a consistent internal PSI. When the countdown procedure is complete, the canner will beep 3 times and the control LED display panel will read off. So once this counts all the way down from 75, then this will say off. It'll beep 3 times and then it'll say off. When it does that, you know your process is complete. And then it says if it bypasses the process and allows the canner to cool briefly, resetting if it bypasses the E10. So if this is running and it goes to the E10, I don't have something right. Either my seal is not, there's a seal on the inside of this lid, which I should have showed you and I forgot. Number 7 is it has a seal that goes all the way around, a rubber seal. So if something would happen and that seal is not on right or it has a little pinch, this will bypass the E10 and not want to do anything else. So what you'll have to do is let it cool off and then start the whole process over. So this is my 3rd time using it. Let's hope that doesn't happen. And that is the process that I'm using this morning, using the electric canner, canning pork. And again, I'm using the USDA recommended guidelines. This is similar to the sous vide method of cooking meat, is it? I'm not familiar with what that is. I know that when you were cooking, or whenever you were canning meat, meat has to be done in a pressure canner. Some people, years ago, even, I used to, because I didn't know any better, I used to do venison, which is deer meat, and I would use what's called a water bath canner, which is a canner. You put your rack in, set it on the stove, put your jars in tight, not finger tight, but tight. And then you would cover it with water, making sure your lids were covered with water. And then we would can it for 4 hours. That's considered Rebel canning. I didn't know what Rebel canning was at the time. It was the way we were raised. But this is the proper guidelines using the USDA, Department of Agriculture, the Complete Book of Home Canning. So you have to be very careful whenever you are home canning. You don't want to make yourself sick. You don't want to make your family sick or anyone that you would be giving this food to. You don't want to make them sick. So by following your proper guidelines with USDA, and let me turn this a little bit because I don't want that steam coming right up underneath my cabinet. So I'm going to turn it just a little bit before it starts steaming, because I'm limited on my space. I've got a puppy following me. So if you are properly using the guidelines and doing everything that's required, make sure that everything is clean, everything is sanitized, clean jars, new lids. I don't reuse my lids for canning. Now, if I do have some lids and I take them off and they don't look too bad, if I'm storing something like pasta in a quart jar, I'll go ahead and use that lid because I know I'm not actually using it to preserve meat or anything that would be going through the canning process. And this is 2 products that I did do using that same canner that I'm using today. And this is the chicken breast. And I canned this on January the 20th of 2026. That was the first time I used this new canner. And it turned out absolutely amazing. Very pretty. And then I canned beef, and this was done the following day on 1/21/26. And you can see the fat cap is what they call this. You're not adding any liquids whenever you are raw packing or cold packing. It's called raw packing. You just put your meat in and you make sure you get it up to your headspace. And as you can see, even though I had it up to the inch headspace, it's down below that headspace. And I have some meat in fluid, my fat cap, and some meat that is not in the fluid. Does that mean this meat above is not good? Absolutely not. My jar is sealed. It went through the proper time, the proper pressure. So when I open this and reheat it, this on the top may discolor a little bit if you have it in your pantry for a long period of time. But all of that will turn the same color as this, and you'll never notice what was up on the top. Now, if you don't want a lot of fat, you can go ahead and when you open the jar, you can remove this fat cap if you don't want to use that. But if I'm making a stew or whatever, I just open this and just put everything from the jar into my pot, and then add my vegetables and add some broth, and it makes an absolutely wonderful beef stew. No, Bobby. Let me see if I can get my puppy a treat here. I'll be right back. You have to share. Here, love it. In here. Sorry about that, but we're real life here. We have two Maltese, and they're my babies. So that's how simple and easy this is using the electric canner. So this is going to take probably about 20 to 30 minutes for it to get up to temperature. And then when it beeps and shows me the E10, I'm going to go over and turn it to airtight. Right now it's on exhaust, and then it'll go counting down to 75 minutes. Once it gets down to the end of the 75 minutes, it'll beep 3 times and it'll say off. And I know that it is done. So at that point, what I do is just let it set for another approximately an hour, and it will automatically depressurize itself. It does have the small thing that pops up in the back, and you can kind of look and see that it's down, but I want to give it the full hour and let it slowly come down to natural pressure. And once it comes down, then I'll open the lid, I'll remove my jars, and I have a towel ready, and I'll come in and set them out on my towel. And once you set them out, I know you want to go over and check and see, did they seal? Don't do that. Just leave your jars set, and usually within about 8 hours, they're all sealed. But always wait 24 hours, and then I'll come in and check them. And you can tap the top, and you can tell by sound, once you get used to the sound, whether or not that these have sealed. So then I'll take off my rings, I'll wash my jars in warm soapy water and rinse them off real well. And when I go to store them, I'll put on my jar, this is chicken, and the date that I canned it, which was 1/20/2026, and I make sure I leave my ring off, because as I stated earlier in this live, if you leave your ring on, it can give what's called a false seal. It may look sealed on your pantry when you're going through to check, but it's not. And when you open it, it may have a smell, or you may notice that whenever you take the ring off, the lid's not secure. So to keep that from happening, always remove your ring and can it with just the lid. And you can go through and check occasionally. If you can get a hold of your lid and raise it up and it's not coming off in your pantry, then you know this jar is sealed. And when you open it, always do your smell. Make sure everything smells good, everything looks good, it's not discolored, doesn't have a different odor than what you think it should. And it's very nice to have canned protein like chicken and beef, and now I'm going to do some pork, because if I'm in a hurry or I'm not feeling well, I can always go in and get a jar of chicken and make some homemade chicken noodle soup, or a jar of beef and make a stew, or a pint of pork and make a stew, make a pulled pork barbecue sandwiches. So it's really nice to have the ability to do this, to know that you're doing it properly, that you're following guidelines, that you're not rebel canning. You're not a rebel. You're not canning, rebel canning. you're using USDA, Department of Agriculture, home canning, and the Ball canning books, they update them a lot, so I may not have all of the newest updated, but I do have several. This is the Ball Home Preserving. And then I have the Ball Continue, or the Ball Guide to Preserving. And this is the Ball Blue Book. And then I have another Ball Blue Book for preserving. So if you're following the guidelines and you're using them properly, you're using safe, tested methods of canning and preserving your fruits, your vegetables, your meats. So this way you have all your preserves in your pantry. You know that you've taken your time, you've made it yourself, and it gives you a little more pantry stable meats, proteins, vegetables. You can do beans, vegetables, fruits, but always follow the Blue Book, Ball Blue Book, for canning and preserving, because some things are not pressure canned. Some things are water bathed, like I spoke of earlier, like your high acids, like your tomatoes, your peaches. There's some things like that that you do not pressure can, but meat definitely has to be pressure canned. So pick up some Ball Canning and Preserving books. They're available at Amazon. Sometimes you can get them at used bookstores, eBay, and do your own research so that you feel comfortable doing your own home canning and preserving, and you know that you're using the proper canning methods. And this is one that I really recommend if you can find it. I think I got this one in December of 2020. So I've had it for a while, and whenever I get ready to preserve, I always go in and pull out my books, make sure that I'm going to have everything that I need to can, because this will give you a complete guideline. It's absolutely amazing. It tells you about your headspace, how to preserve everything properly, how to, what canning tools that you'll need. Okay, now I did beep, and it's telling me E10. So this has come up to pressure. I'll kind of slowly turn it around there. I don't want to move it too much. You can see E10. So now I'm going to take that from exhaust to airtight. Now, it'll go from E10 to E9. It'll start its countdown. And it'll start allowing steam to come up out of here. That's why I'm turning it a little bit, because I'm limited on my space, and I don't want that up underneath of my cabinet. So with me turning it this way, I know the steam's going to come up here, and I can just walk in and see my timer, and I can keep my eye on it. So it's went through the process of heating up and getting to the proper pressure. And now it's doing the 10-minute countdown, which is E10. E, again, was for your exhaust, because it needs to be venting a full stream of steam for 10 minutes. So instead of me doing it on the stove top, and I see that full stream of steam and setting a 10-minute timer, this does everything automatically. Oh, wait a minute, did I do that? I might have done that wrong. Let me make sure. Because this is only my third time using it. No. This needs to be on the vent. I'm glad I looked, that needs to be on the vent. For 10. I almost messed up talking. Now you can hear that pressure. Yes, the E means exhaust and the 10 means minutes. The pressure canner will automatically count down the E10 to 0. So that's my 10 minutes of steady stream. I'm talking and saying that, and it's connected in my brain, or I would have had to start over. So I'm going to let that count down from E10 to E0. Now once that gets to 0, it'll beep again. At this time, when it gets to 0, then I turn it from exhaust to airtight. Then it'll resume counting. Now once it comes all the way down from E10 to E0, I'll turn it from exhaust to airtight. And then where that E10 is, it'll then resume to my 75 minutes. And then it'll start my countdown for my 75 minutes. And once it gets down to 0, it'll say end. And then at that time, my canning process is done. And I will unplug my electric canner and I will let it set for at least 60 minutes and allow it to depressurize on its own. And then after the hour, I'll come in and open it, and then I'll remove my pint jars and put them on my towel. This is what happens when I'm talking. And here is what's called a canning kit. So this is your basics. You have a canning funnel. I didn't use the funnel on this because it's quart jars or pint jars, and they were wide mouth. So you'll have your canning funnel. And these are relatively cheap. This is your jar lifter to lift your jars properly from your canner, because they will be hot. This is a debubbler. So if you're using a liquid in your jars, you don't want any bubbles. So once you put your product in and add your liquid, you would go around the jar and release any air bubbles. And this also has a magnet on this end. So if you have boiled your lids or put your lids in boiling water, you can just reach in with your magnet and pick up one lid at a time. So this is your debubbler. Your jar opener. And a jar or bottle brush. So this is a simple basic kit that you can get. And this is basically all you would need for canning. This will get you started. And this is a Roots and Branches brand. And I've had this for many, many years. So the only thing I'm going to leave out is my jar lifter. And this is your handles that you're going to hold with. And this is the part that you're going to be picking up your jar with. When you remove it from your canner. That way you're not going to burn yourself. And I always pick it up and then try to have another towel or rag underneath just to kind of catch any hot water that's dripping. And then I'll take it over and set it down on my towel when it comes out of the canner. And you can hear my pressure. You can hear my jiggler. And I'm going to go ahead. This is the bone that I had from cutting the meat. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the refrigerator. And then I'm going to continue to cut the rest of this meat. And I'm going to put it in a container, or a smaller container. I'm going to get it a little bit bigger. And then I'll probably wait and process the rest of these tomorrow. That way I'm not up on my leg for a long length of time, because I do have an injured foot and leg. I try to be on my live streams about an hour to an hour and a half. But this will take you through this process. And then I'll come on tomorrow and show you the product that we canned today. Because you were here with me, so we did it together. Let me see if I can move you over there a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this ready. That one has an awful lot of fat on it, so I'm not going to use all of that. And I'll just cover this and put it in the refrigerator. And then tomorrow, or later on this afternoon if I feel like it, and after my canner has completely cooled off and I've got everything redone, I'll start my second batch. So that will give me 5 pint jars. And they are the wide mouth jars. As you can see, that one there is almost all fat, so I'm going to lay it off to the side. But most likely I'll finish this tomorrow and run the canner through. Okay, now I'm on E0. So all I did was flip that to airtight. Now you're not hearing all of that pressure. And now it'll go from the E0. Right now it's blinking E0. It'll go up, it'll start with the 75, which I originally put in for the 75 minutes. And then it will start its countdown. And it will pressure can for 75 minutes. And then it will beep again. And when it beeps again, it'll turn off. And at that point, I'll unplug my canner. And I'll just let it sit there for about 60 minutes to 90 minutes. And then I'll come in and remove my jars, open my lids and remove my jars. That allows it to depressurize on its own. And do its process the way it's meant to do. So if I have other things to do, I can still keep an eye on it. Now during the 75 minutes, it'll occasionally let off steam. And that's because it has the pressure regulator on it to automatically allow the steam to come up off of the, up out of the canner. And again, this is all USDA approved canning. This is not rebel canning, as they call it. This is following the USDA guidelines. This is considered safe canning. And the proper method of canning and preserving. And anytime that you're preserving meat, if it's pork, if it's chicken, if it's beef, it is the same amount of time. It's 75 minutes for your pints. It's 90 minutes for quarts. Now, if you're doing hamburger or ground hamburger or sausage, in order for you to can that, you do not raw pack that, like I'm doing this. I put this in raw. If you're doing hamburger or pork sausage, you would brown it, and then you would pack your jars, and with your hamburger or your sausage, you do add a liquid. You add water up to the 1-inch headspace that we talked about before. But if you're just doing chicken, breast, if you're doing pork, like I'm doing today, if you're doing beef, you do not, with the raw pack, that's got a piece of bone right there. With the raw pack, you don't add any liquid. You just put your meat in about 1-inch cubes. And you put it in up to 1-inch headspace. And you don't want to push your meat down in the jar. Now you can hear that by allowing pressure to come off over there. Now if I was making a video, we would fast forward to it being done. But this is a log stream. And that will take 75 minutes. You can hear it releasing steam. It went from the E0 to now it's spinning again. And when it gets to the proper pressure, it'll start 75 minutes and then start a countdown. Bobby, Mommy can't do that right now. Mommy can't do that right now. And I do leave a lot of the fat on the pork because I've tried canning pork loin, and your pork loin is a lot more dry when you can it. The pork butt, now here in my beef, it went to 075. So now it's starting my 75-minute countdown. So the next beep that I hear will be, I believe it's 3 long beeps. Now, if I was saving this pork to render into lard, the fat, but I don't usually have enough fat to render, and we normally have 5-gallon buckets of lard that I'll get, and then once I open that 5-gallon bucket, I have to put the lard on the stove and then heat it up to where it's melted, and then I can transfer that into canning jars and then can my lard into individual quarts or pints. So for today, I'm just going to toss that. And I'm going to clean up my work. So anytime that you're canning or preserving, it's always nice to have some white vinegar. So once you fill your jars, you can wipe your rims, take a paper towel, put some vinegar on it, and wipe your rims to ensure there's nothing on the rims. So you'll need some white distilled vinegar. You can use water. However, pork is very fat and greasy, so I like to use vinegar anytime I'm using or working with pork. The Presto canner, I think, is what I have. I think it just came to me. I think it is the Presto pressure canner. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just clean up this workspace a little bit here. You can hear my pressure coming off of my canner. And that is my pressure valve doing a natural pressure release. Then I'm going to cover my bowl. And I'm going to set this back into the refrigerator. And I will probably do this either tonight or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow. Because I'm still not feeling real good. I've had this silly cold. So make sure everything is clean, everything is sanitized, because you're preserving food for yourself and your family. So make sure your jars are washed and rinsed and clean, sanitized. I wash my lids, I wash my rings. Make sure anything you're using, like your containers that you'll be using, make sure everything is clean, everything is sanitized. Constantly wash your hands. You can't wash your hands enough, so you're not cross-contaminating. And that way, when you're done, you know that you have a beautiful product. And this is the chicken breast, and this is the beef. I did this one on January 20th of this year, 2026. And I did my beef the next day, January 21st, 2026. And these were my test runs using my new electric canner, the Nesco. And this is the one I'm using today. And it is the 9.5 quart digital smart canner. N as Nancy, P as Paul, C as Cat, -9. And that is the canner that we're using today. So, I hope that was informative. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. And it will give you the inspiration to maybe try canning and preserving some of your own food for your pantry. And now I'll have chicken and some beef and some pork. And I like this canner, the electric canner, because it does 4 quarts or 5 pints. And I have a small family. It's myself and my husband. So I can do 5 pints at a time and do like 10 pints of my chicken, of my beef, and of my pork. And that gives me at least 30 jars of protein. And I know that it's fresh. I know that I followed the guidelines. It's safe. It's safe for me. It's safe for my family. And I'll have three varieties. I'll have 10 chicken, 10 pork, and 10 beef. So anyway, that's what I'm doing this morning, and I thought I'd bring you along and share my new experience using the electric canner, the Nesco. So far, I had 1 pint that did not seal, and whenever I checked it, the ring that goes on the outside of your jar, which was a brand new lids and rings, and apparently I missed it, but right in the top, the ring had a pinch bend in it. So that was the 1 jar of the chicken that didn't seal. So if it doesn't seal within 24 hours, and always remember 24 hours, If it doesn't seal, use that, put it in your refrigerator and use it, or you can take it back through the whole process and just put it in the refrigerator whenever you're reprocessing. If you're doing the next batch, add it right in with your next batch and just reprocess it. I usually just put it in the refrigerator. I put that in the refrigerator overnight, and then the next day I made homemade chicken noodle soup. And it turned out absolutely delicious. And on my live stream yesterday, I was showing the chicken noodle soup that I had made, the homemade chicken noodle soup, using the homemade fettuccine noodles that I make. And it was part of my pantry and freezer stock up yesterday. I had made the homemade chicken noodle soup using my own home canned chicken breast. And they turn out beautiful. I'm so happy with this so far. Everything I've tried, it comes out so tender. The chicken just shreds. The beef just shreds. The pork just shreds. So if I want to make a chicken noodle soup, if I want to make a chicken salad, just open a jar, drain the juice, and it shreds up so easy. It makes delicious chicken salad sandwiches. I've used the canned chicken for the chicken noodle soup. I've used it for chicken and dumplings. I've used it to put in my chicken pot pie. I just drain my juice. If I'm, going to be using it for like chicken pot pie, or if I'm going to be using it for chicken salad sandwiches. Now, if I'm making a soup, I just go ahead and just add everything in the jar, the juice as well. The same thing if I'm making chicken and dumplings. And with the beef, this makes absolutely wonderful beef stew. It's so tender. It just falls apart. It's already cooked. It makes it a quicker meal. So open a can of that and a few cans of your vegetables, or rehydrate your dehydrated vegetables and make yourself some beef stew. And then with the pork, I like to make the barbecue pulled pork sandwiches, and it just falls apart. I'll just open it and just warm it, and it just shreds so easy, and then add my barbecue sauce. And I have a very quick dinner using the canned pork and turning it into barbecue pulled pork sandwiches. And it also makes wonderful stew. If you want to make a soup, vegetable soup, you could use your beef, you could use your pork. So you can have multiple uses, and you know that it is safe. You've used the guidelines, USDA guidelines. You've made sure that you followed all the instructions in your canning, in your canner, pressure canner, whether it be a stovetop or whether it be an electric smart canner like I'm using today, the Nesco. So, don't be afraid to try new things, but always, always follow the guidelines. I'm going to put this in the refrigerator. Always follow your guidelines. Always keep everything clean and sanitized. You can't wash your hands enough. Continue to wash your hands. That way you're not cross-contaminating. And the more that you do this, the more comfortable you'll become with it. Is it a little intimidating at first? Yes. Even this intimidated me at first, because I wasn't really sure what to think of the electric canner. Because when it's on the stovetop, you can control your heat, your temperature. And this is something all new. This was my birthday gift from my husband. And this is the third time I've used it. And by me talking today and not paying attention, I almost messed up. So always follow your guidelines. Get everything ready ahead of time. I had my jars washed and dried and settings ready, my rings and lids. I have my canning supplies that I need. I went ahead and cut my meat off the bone to make it a little bit quicker. And I had one area set up with a clean cutting board, a sharp knife. So get everything ready. Read over your book until you feel comfortable, and don't be afraid to take the book in the kitchen with you. And keep referring to the process throughout the process. And the more that you do it, the more comfortable you're going to become. And before long, you'll be... Kitty found my post. Before long, you'll feel very comfortable canning, and before you know it, you'll be canning fruits and vegetables and meats, and you will be filling your own pantry, and you'll be doing it in a safe, USDA-approved guideline. So always use your USDA guidelines, follow them. And again, I use this book, which is the USDA guidelines. And then I have multiple of the Ball Canning and Preserving. This is the hardback. And then I have 2 of the Ball Canning and Preserving. And these are all approved guidelines. So if you're following the guidelines, your food is safe. You're not going to make yourself sick. You're not going to make your family sick. Always, when you're putting it in the pantry, before you put it in the pantry, remove your ring after it's done. Make sure it's sealed. Remove your ring. Wash your jars. Dry them. Label them. What did you make? What date? And rotate your pantry. Move everything that you've got in there forward. Put your new stock in the back. And usually about once a month or every couple months, go in and check your pantry. And don't store them with the rings, just with the lid, because your rings can give you a false seal. It may look like it's sealed, but it's not. So you don't want to make yourself sick. So you can go in and check your pantry. That way you're checking your stock. What do I need to can? And you're rotating everything. And you can wipe off your jars while you're in there and keep a nice fresh pantry that you know that you're using on a regular basis. You're rotating it, and you're using USDA approved guidelines whenever you're self-preserving, home preserving. So safety first, always safety first. Follow your instructions. Work in a sanitized area. And if you don't want to handle the meat, by all means use gloves. I've just always used my hands. Now if I have a cut or a nick or something, then yes, I'll go ahead and use gloves. So I hope this was informative. Right now I'm counting down. It's went from 75 minutes to 60 minutes, and I'll bring it over so you can see that, because I really don't want to move my canner around that much. Hopefully you can see that. So now it's went down to 60. It started at 75, 075, which is my 75 minutes. You can hear the air pressure coming from my valve. It's on airtight. I moved it from exhaust to airtight, and that's naturally allowing the steam that it needs to come up and hold that pressure that this canner needs to do this properly. And then it will continue to count down, and once this counts down, it'll beep, I think, 3 times and say end or off. And when it does that, I'll just unplug my canner, allow it to set for 60 to 90 minutes, and allow it to naturally depressurize. And then I'll come in and slowly turn the lid, and open it, and let it sit there for just about 5 minutes, and then I'll remove my jars, and I'll take them over to my prepared area that I've got prepared to set my jars on. So that is the process that I use for canning the pork with the electric canner. I also have, I think it is the Presto stovetop, but I'm not using it. Now with it, I think I can put 7 pints or 7 quarts or something like that in it. So you can do more, but this is working great for me. It's, I can just put everything in there and I can still get a few things done. It's only doing 5 pints at a time or 4 quarts at a time. So with a small family, this is wonderful. And it's doing most of everything for me. I don't have to come in and keep checking my heat to make sure that it's not too high under my pressure canner if I had it on the stove. So yes, I'm still staying close. I'm still listening. I can audibly hear that steam. So that way I know that it's, have you ever canned green tomatoes? When I was young, yes, those are not pressure canned. Those, you would do in what's called a water bath. Now, with pressure canning, you would need a pressure canner for your meat products. You can also pressure can. A lot of your vegetables require a pressure canner. But like tomatoes, they are a high acid, and you can do those in a water bath. Your fruits can be done in a water bath. They're high acid. So, again, you would want to follow your guidelines from the BAL and from the USDA, Department of Agriculture. We grew up, my mother preserved everything. Fruits, vegetables, and yes, she canned green tomatoes. She would slice the green tomatoes and layer them in the jar and then add her liquid. And I think she added salt. Now this, I did not add salt to my meat. It does say for a quart, you can put a teaspoon, or a pint, you can put a half a teaspoon. But it's not required. So I did not add the salt because when I'm cooking, I'll be adding my own salt, pepper, garlic powder, whatever, spices. And I want to be able to control that amount of salt. So it's not required. If you do feel more comfortable using the salt, make sure that it is a canning salt and that it is not iodized salt. But my mother used to can everything, and I used to love it when we'd open up a jar of the green tomatoes, and they'd be stacked in the quart jar, and we just drain the fluid, and then we would get a hot iron skillet going with grease, and we'd roll our green tomatoes in flour and fry them in the iron skillet. So, yes, we used to can green tomatoes. I have not done that myself because I haven't had a garden for many years. I haven't done that myself for many years. But I love green tomatoes, canned green tomatoes. So it's been probably about 30 years since I canned green tomatoes. Maybe even regular tomatoes. I don't think I've canned regular tomatoes. Now, I've canned fruits. I do have, when I do my jellies and jams, I have what's called a BAL, which is made by BAL. I have the BAL jelly and jam maker. And you just put your ingredients in it, and the jam maker makes everything, and then you just put it into your jars. And again, with those, it's water bath. You'll have a hot jam or jelly coming out of the BAL jam and jelly maker. So your jelly jars have to be hot. So I normally put my water in my canner, my water bath canner, get it good and hot, and then whenever my jelly's ready, I'll just take one jar out at a time, fill up my jelly or jam, and then replace it back in. And I'll do that using my cold bath, which is not pressure. And that's, I don't even know if you can buy the ball, jelly, and jam makers anymore. But I absolutely love it. I'm not standing over the stove worrying about it scorching. I just put all my ingredients in it and turn it on, and when it beeps, it's done. So I like that, and I've been using that for many, many years now. So that's basically, I think, all I can think of. Always remember when you're canning to follow the guidelines. Your headspace is so important, whether it be an inch or if you can go over that inch. Always check your guideline. See what it's at telling you, how much headspace, whether you do need liquid or whether you do not need liquid. Because if you do not have that proper headspace, when you're filling up your jar to like the 1 inch headspace would be this ring. And you need that in order for this to can properly using the guidelines that they have tested and approved. So follow that headspace. If you do not have enough meat to fill up the jar, use a smaller jar, or go ahead and put it in the refrigerator and make a meal out of it. But do not short yourself headspace if you're raw packing like I was and it's just meat and there's no liquid. Now, if you are hot packing, which you've browned your meat and you put your meat in the jar and then added your liquid and debubbled, you can add your liquid up to the 1 inch headspace. But when you're raw packing like I did, make sure your meat is up to the 1 inch headspace. That is a must. Don't go over it, and don't pack your meat down in there. Just, you can lightly push it down in, but don't pack the meat down in. And you're not adding any liquid, you're spinning the meat. And then when it gets done, you're going to see the finished product and how nice it is. So follow your guidelines. Do your research. There's many, many videos on YouTube. If you don't feel comfortable and you're researching, watch videos, but make sure what videos you're watching, they're using the USDA, Department of Agriculture, tried and proven procedure. Or they're using the ball canning procedure. These have been tested and approved to be safe for consumption. They're not going to make you sick as long as you're following the procedure. So don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to start preserving. Don't try to go out and get everything at once. I started off with a water bath canner, which is about $20 to $40, and a case of jars. And then later on, I started adding and getting more jars, more lids, more rings. Then I got the pressure canner for the range top. This, my husband just got me this year, and I am 63 and learning how to use a new pressure canner. This is the electric pressure canner, the Nesco, and this is the 3rd time I've used this. So this is my birthday present. And so just slowly build yourself up to it. Do your research. And then when you feel comfortable, go into your kitchen, get everything clean, everything sanitized, and start preserving your own home canned products. Your meats, your proteins, your vegetables, your fruits. Make your jellies, your jams. And I think you'll really enjoy it. It does seem a little overwhelming at first, so watch videos. And again, make sure that they are following the proper guidelines. They're doing it right. Make sure that you have whatever canner you're using, be it a water bath or a pressure canner, stovetop or electric. Get your manual out and read it. And, follow it. If you still don't feel comfortable, there's many, many videos that you can go online and watch other people that are reviewing this particular product, maybe be it the electric canner or the stovetop pressure canner or the stovetop cold packing method. And that, until you feel comfortable, don't be afraid to go out and do your research, because the more knowledge you have, the better success you have, in my opinion. So, always can save. Enjoy your kitchen. You're never too young or too old, like myself, to learn new things. So, I hope you enjoyed this, and I've been on here now a little over an hour and a half, and I only like to be on here about an hour and a half because my foot and leg bothers me pretty bad from the that I had. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. Enjoyed learning how to use the Nesco Smart Electric Canner, and I'm down to 47 minutes. So tomorrow I'll come on and show you the finished product after it's set for 24 hours. Or right at it, well, not quite 24 hours, but in the morning. And like I said, even though you're tempted, when it comes out, just leave it set. Don't touch it, don't bother it, and then go in. 24 hours is the golden rule. If it's not sealed within 24 hours, put it in the refrigerator, use it, make a meal out of it, or it needs to be reprocessed. So follow safe guidelines. Enjoy your kitchen. Enjoy experimenting, but doing it in a healthy and approved canning method for preserving and stockpiling your pantry with your own home canned meats, vegetables, fruits, jellies, and jams. So, until next time, bye-bye everyone. I'm going to go ahead and hop off of here. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment. If you haven't, please like and subscribe if you like this kind of video. And I will see you the next time. Enjoy your Wednesday. The sun's out. It's a beautiful day. And as always, be kind. Be kind to one another. We need to see more of that. Bye-bye, everyone. Enjoy your day. Thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate it.